Have you ever watched balloon artists as they work? Once inflated, the balloon is pinched or twisted into a three-dimensional object or animal. Isn't that what we do with our fabric? We give flat fabric a new life with a pinch of a tuck, a twist of a pleat, or rows of gathered stitches. Today's projects use fabric artistry to share new ways to make beautiful things. You are a welcome guest today in my sewing room. Thanks for visiting. Fabric artistry is what we're all about, those of us that love to sew. This is a wonderful example of fabric artistry. The beautiful pillow out of silk dupioni has several different wonderful techniques. First of all, just straight sewing, a straight stitch. Again, if you look carefully, you'll see a straight stitch behind this wonderful design. I'm almost going to call this rat tail smocking. This is a gridded effect that looks a little like chicken wire too, doesn't it? And what it is, it's rat tail that has been brought over using a grid, a stitched grid as well as a marked grid, of course, which the marked grid has been washed away. And you do a little catch, and then you go over and do a little catch, and you do a little catch. This is a wonderful example of fabric artistry. And the most wonderful thing is it's extremely easy. First of all, you can mark your grids. Now, if you use this fabric chalk, which you really can't see too well, but these lines are all the way across, that goes away real easily. But we have drawn some on with a pen so you can see. Stitch, straight stitching, just plain old straight stitch down those fabric lines, and then draw the rest of your grid on with whatever you'd like to use to draw it with. So we have a whole gridded piece of fabric with one of them stitched, straight stitch. You can use a ribbon. This happens to be just a little polka dot ribbon or a plain ribbon, and this is rat tail, which really works. The ribbons or whatever you use have to be able to be manipulated. They have to be kind of squishy. Okay, now you're going to start moving bar tack, move it over bar tack, bring your rat tail over bar tack, rat tail braid, bring it over again, lining it up, bar tack, bring it out again to the next grid marking and bar tack. You kind of get the idea how easy it is, and we love beautiful and easy. I'm so very happy to have as my guest today my very dear friend Chris Tryon. Chris is the National Event Manager and Creative Manager for Baby Lock USA. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martha.
And thank you for this beautiful
Oh, you're
pillow.
more than welcome. It was fun.
Well,
it was
show us
really
how
fun.
you did it. It looks pretty easy.
Let's go through the steps. Yeah, it's very easy.
It's beautiful.
The first step is the fabric that I chose for this sample was a silk dupioni, and what I did was I backed it with interfacing to give it a little bit more body because of the rat tail braid and the stitching that you're going to do on it, so in a sense the fabric didn't smush up or scrunch up.
We don't want smush.
No, we don't want smush fabric. Okay, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to take that fabric and you're going to actually mark it. And I used a chalk marker because it comes out real easy. You could use a fine tip washout marker too. And you're going to mark lines that are a ½ inch apart from each other down your panel piece. Okay. After you've got that marked, then what you're going to do is you're actually going to take and select the straight stitch on your sewing machine and about 2.0, 2.5 stitch length, and you're going to stitch down those straight stitch marked lines. Then what you're going to do is you're going to come back on that same panel piece. You're going to go horizontal across the vertical lines a ½ inch apart. And the two types of cords that you're going to use is you can use a satin ribbon or you can use what we call as a rat tail cord, and that's what I chose. And the reason I did was I kind of wanted my technique to look like chicken wire, so it had that three-dimensional look, and the rat tail did that. Now what you're going to do is you're going to actually use those straight stitch lines as your reference point. So let's move over to the sewing machine and actually see how this technique is accomplished on the machine. Now for the machine setup, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to put on either an open toe foot or a satin stitch foot, something so that you can see all your markings and see your cording. You're going to select a zigzag stitch, and you're going to adjust the stitch width to 2.5, 3.0, depending upon what kind of cord or ribbon you use. You're going to take your stitch length down to 0, and you're going to not drop your feed ducts. You don't need to do that. Now, if you have a machine that has an automatic presser foot lift, I would suggest engaging it at this time or attaching your knee lift, because you're going to need that. So what you can see is I've actually started my first set and I've attached it. I've come over here to the next ½ inch mark, and on the pillow I actually did 1 inch marks instead of ½ inch, but on this sample we're going to do ½ inch. Now I'm going to bring that the cord over to the center mark right there, and I'm just going to place it underneath the machine. I'm going to drop my presser foot, and I am going to tack it in place, cut my threads, and then I'm going to bring it back over to this next ½ inch mark, and I am going to drop my feed ducts. I'm going to tack it in place. Whoops, I didn't catch that, so we'll just lift the presser foot and go back and re-catch it. And once in a while that happens, cut it, and we're going to come back over to this mark here. Again, drop the feed ducts, tack it in place, cut it, and you just keep going down all the way down the piece, panel piece like that, and that's how you actually catch everything.
Let me show our viewers one more time. And I think you said you wanted this to look like chicken wire.
Chicken wire, yep.
It looks like smocking to me.
Oh,
so
okay.
maybe we have chicken wire smocking?
We have chicken wire smocking.
Does that sound like a brand new technique invented by Chris herself? Chris, thank you so much.
You're
and now
welcome.
Chris has some beautiful sewing inspirations to share with you. Chris, I am enchanted with these beautiful home decorating pillows. Just tell us your wonderful techniques.
Let's go through the first one over here. This one, the inspiration actually came from a piece of fabric I saw in a high-end home dec store that was about $55 a yard, and I figured I'm not going to pay $55 a yard for it.
I don't think so.
But I knew I could recreate it. So what it is just strips of fabric, and then I use the serger actually to gather the off-white strips. And instead of leaving it gathered, I pressed it flat, so that it gave it the look of that, in a sense, it was one piece of fabric rather than 2 pieces of fabric put together. And then I just accented it with a strip of fabric and a belt buckle that I found at a thrift goods store. So,
I love it.
The next one, this was a fun one. I used the the thread, excuse me, that actually shrinks when you iron it with the heat. And that was actually used as a background. And the flowers were created by bonding 2 pieces of fabric together, and then I cut them into strips, use an applique stitch along the edge and made sure it fell off, and then I just created the little flowers, and they're accented with covered buttons and crystals.
This is fascinating. What are these big circles? You're going to slip it through.
Yeah, just slip it through. That you can actually find in your home deck section. They are curtain grommets, which are probably the hottest thing right now that you'll find in the home deck section. And I just use them as, rather than on the curtain, I used them as an accent on the pillow, and then slid a piece of fabric.
That wonderful silk organza. And I love these uneven pin tucks.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, no worry about sewing straight pin tucks on this one. Yes, and then I accent
uneven. It's just
all the way across the fabric. You need quite a bit of fabric because it does scrunch it up. And then I just went and did ribbon ties with it, and then used the same belt buckles that I found as an
craft store.
Yep,
The belt buckles.
Exactly.
Very, very simple and just fabulous.
Yeah, this one was really easy. It's just rows and rows and rows of straight stitch, and then I did the piping. I ruched it by gathering the fabric up on the cording rather than leaving it straight, and that's how you get the ruched piping. It's really easy.
Nothing but straight lines on your silk dupioni.
You can practice your straight stitching.
Absolutely. Well, sometimes that's the hardest to do.
That is. It's a great way to practice.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, this one was fun. This is just strips of elastic that I cut. I stretched it and sewed it, and it gathers the fabric. And then the tie was created on the serger with the belt loop attachment. And then the tassels were created on the serger again using the chain stitch and decorative thread. And I just wound and wound and wound and made my own tassels for half of what you pay for in a store.
Well, Chris, these are absolutely exquisite.
Thank you.
Thank you. And
You're
those wonderful, easy techniques.
Yes, very easy.
And now Chris has some so quick, so easy ideas to share with you. Chris, that is the most beautiful orange rose.
Oh, thank you. Actually, I took this technique from Margaret Tully, and I've kind of changed it a little bit. The first thing that you're going to do to create this rose is you're going to start with a strip of fabric, and I actually use silk du peony, and I doubled it. So if I wanted my rose to be 2.5 inches high, I would have cut my strip of fabric 5 inches wide. But the trick is that the direction that you cut it. Usually we cut things across the grain. On this, you actually want to cut this lengthwise because it will gather better if it's cut lengthwise. So let's go through the next step. You're actually going to gather both sides of the fabric, and you can see that using the serger.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take that strip and you're going to fold it in half, okay? Then you're going to, so we don't have that raw edge, you're going to turn that raw edge in, okay?
On the ends.
On the ends. Then you're going to go back over to the serger and you're going to run a gathering stitch one more time.
Is there any particular foot or anything you use to
you
gather
want to use
on
a
the
ruffling
serger?
foot. Yeah,
use
good
the ruffling,
use a ruffling foot. Good
thought,
point. That's something that I forgot.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, you're going to use a ruffling foot. Then what you're going to do is you're going to get fabric glue. And you're literally just going to run a bead of glue, not a whole lot, along that stitching. And you're literally just going to sit there and you're going to roll it as you go. And the trick, or the next trick is to, and we'll show you on this one, is you want to smush or smash the bottom so that it isn't pointy. Okay, the final step is to let that dry, and then you're going to take a piece of felt, cut a circle, take that same glue, glue it on, and then you're going to take a pin back that you can find in any hobby store in the jewelry section, and you're actually going to sew it to the back side so that you end up with your perfect ribbon rose. And then because this is silk, I can mold it and smash it any way I want.
That is so easy and so
Very
much
easy.
fun to wear on your clothing, to put on home decorating.
A purse.
Ooh,
yeah,
purse
a purse would be
pretty.
great.
It's
yeah.
so easy, and I love that ruffling attachment on the serger.
Well, it makes it really quick. Next thing you know,
Pretty
we'll be making
magical, isn't it?
Yep, it is.
Thank you so much,
You're
Chris.
welcome.
And next I have some hand embroidery for you. I'm so pleased to have as my guest today Beverley Sheldrick from New Zealand. Beverley is an internationally recognized needlework author and teacher. Beverley, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martha. It's always wonderful to be here with you.
I'm so thrilled with this beautiful christening dress and the beautiful blanket that you have made, and I'll have to let you tell them for which occasion.
Oh, well, it is, this is a very, very special gown because it has been made specifically for Martha's birthday. She has a significant birthday, and I'm not allowed to tell you which one, but she did not have a christening gown of her own, and she just felt that it wasn't fair. All her grandchildren did, and she didn't. So this is what we have, and hopefully it'll have another owner in the relatively near future.
Beverley, it's so beautiful. The flowers on the front. And what flower are you going to teach us today?
Well, today, Martha, we're going to do this little star. It's a blanket stitch star flower. It doesn't technically have a real name, but I wanted to add extra texture to it. I wanted to break. We've got a lot of those big silk ribbon flowers there, and I just wanted to break that so that the whole thing didn't become too sort of sweet or sickly. So by introducing this star flower, I've used a number 8 pearl, which has a sort of a crunchiness about it, which I wanted, and I was really quite pleased with them. And you will see that they are in the middle of the basket there, and you will see that I have also used them here in the middle of this little floret that is on the receiving blanket around here. So you just see here it is in the middle of that little spray of flowers. Now, Martha, they're very simple to do, but they're quite fun, and they grow quickly. Now, you will see here that I've got just 2 bands of this thread here. If I wanted a thicker one, then I would have put 3, and I do know that on some of those bigger ones that are in the centre I did put 3 bars first of all. And the other thing that is a little unusual is the fact that they have 6 petals as opposed to 5. Most flowers have 5, but this one just seemed to need 6, as simple as that. Probably because they don't have a great deal of width to it. So here we are. You can see that we've got these here like this. I want you also to notice that I have left a little hole in the centre. Now you will see here that I have blanket stitched each one of these bars, and then I have put, using silk ribbon in the centre here, I've got a French knot just to fill it up. So here we are, very simple, just over and back and over again, just like that. How difficult can it be?
So far so good.
So here we are. We've gone a little bit further with this one. I'm almost completed, and I need to just get another 2 in there. It's quite acceptable if you want to give to put in, to draw it in on the fabric first of all, if you'd like, just using a light pencil. Now you will see here that I've already started blanket stitching some of these things, and it's very, very easy, just like that. Just make sure that you pull it away from yourself, which will make those stitches just pack nicely next to each other. You don't want them sitting on top of each other. You just want them. You can see how I'm taking the thread away from it. So when I'm using the blunt end of my needle, of course, or you can use a tapestry needle if you want to, I will continue to do that like that, and you will see they're just sitting nicely next to each other. And I'm just going to put another one in, and then when I take my needle to the back, I will put the needle in on that side, on the side that has the heading of that blanket stitch, and that will hold it firmly in place like that. Now, of course, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my silk ribbon, and I've got 4mm as I said, and it will be a true French knot, so it's just the one wrap like that, and put it that way, pull it so that it's sitting down there, and then take it through, and there you are. Now, wasn't that simple?
That was simple. That was simple and very beautiful.
And of course you can do them any size, Martha. If you want a big space, then you can make it a much bigger flower. If you want just a small one, as you saw on the receiving blanket, you can make them quite small as well.
And Beverly, I love my christening dress.
I'm so pleased, Martha.
Thank you so much. And now I have some designer techniques to share with you. I'm so pleased to have as my guest today, Kathy Barnard. Kathy is the editor of So Beautiful magazine. Kathy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Martha. I'm so excited to be here today. I'm going to show a beautiful satin stitch edging by Debbie Glenn. She's one of our favorite designers in the magazine. She always really uses her sewing machine for great innovative things, but she really pushes that sewing machine to the limit to get the most out of it. And I'm going to show you how to do that with satin stitch edging today. First, we have several samples that Debbie has made, and these have been in the magazine in the past. This is a diaper shirt and a little diaper set, and here is the border edging that she's used, and there's no seams here. This is all completely satin stitched, and it looks like piping. So it's a great method to use when piping might be a little bit more difficult to work with. Here you see it again on the collar, on the edges, and it makes such a clean and perfect crisp edge on the collar and the sleeves of this garment, and again on this beautiful girl's garment here. So the satin stitching creates a contrast color and a clean, crisp edge without any seams. Let me go to the boards and show you exactly how she does this. First, she uses a couple of really innovative products like the paper web. The first thing you want to do is trace your border, that's your contrast fabric, in this case gingham fabric, onto the paper side of fusible web. Once you've done that, you're going to fuse this with an iron onto the wrong side of the fabric. And I've made an X on the wrong side of this fabric because there is no right and wrong side. You're going to leave, when you cut this out, you want to leave a little excess around the edge. You don't want to cut exactly on the cutting edge at this point. You want to just fuse this on a block of fabric. Next, you're going to cut out on the edge of the fabric on this black cutting line. And what Debbie does that helps with bulk in the seams is she cuts 1/4 of an inch off. Now this is a miniaturized version of the pattern. The pattern would be much larger or too large to show you. But she cuts that off to reduce bulk in the seam line. And when you're done, you can see that you can peel this paper away and it leaves the web on the back side. The next step is to fuse this. You're going to trace your pattern onto a big block of fabric. This is corded piqué, and she's fused these pieces right on top using her web onto the right side of the fabric. Next, we're going to focus strictly on the technique now, the satin stitching along the edge. Now, once this is fused to your fabric, you want to satin stitch on this inner side, but you're going to need a stabilizer. And this is a fusible tear-away stabilizer. We're going to put that on the bottom to give us a little bit more support underneath while we stitch. Now, the machine is set for a satin stitch at a length of 3.0 and a width of about 0.4. That's going to be different on different sewing machines, but you want a nice, tight, close satin stitch with enough width to really grab that edge and close enough to give you a really almost solid line of stitching. So once that's done, you want to leave, you're going to work on the outer edge, but you're going to leave your stabilizer underneath there. The next step is to sew a straight stitch along the seam line on the outer edge of the garment, and stitching it just helps stabilize that a little bit more and keeps those biased curves from stretching. Keeping the stabilizer underneath, you're going to you're going to cut off, actually, I'm sorry. You want to cut on that stay stitching that you just stitched, leaving the stitching on this side. You don't want to cut your stitching off, but you want to cut right next to it, so you trim off a nice clean edge along that outer edge. Now you're going to zigzag along the outer edge to finish that beautiful edge stitching right here. Let me move that. And it's going to perforate your paper stabilizer a little bit. And once you've done that and you've torn it away, it makes a beautiful clean band. What I want to show you that's most important is when you're stitching this, you want to make sure that your needle, when you're zigzagging and satin stitch this, your needle ends up on the very, very, very edge of that raw edge and then bites over into the fabric. And that gives you the perfect width that cleans up this raw edge and makes that beautiful trimming. And it's
Kathy,
an easy, fast way to do it.
Thank you so very much. That is a wonderful technique.
Thank you.
And now I'd like to share a piece from my vintage collection with you. This little baby day dress is as sweet today as it was 100 or more years ago when it was made. I love the little inset that is just in the bodice. We have French lace, kind of a narrow insertion that has been mitered, come to the middle and miter, out to the side and miter. And in between the little French lace mitered insertion will be the Swiss insertion, pin tuck, Swiss insertion, pin tucks, absolutely precious. The only other decor on the little dress is the French lace that runs around the bottom and a very slightly gathered ruffle with a tiny little baby insertion, French insertion on it. I wanted to show you another beautiful baby piece. This little bonnet is exquisite. The front of the bonnet has a wide piece, very tightly gathered, I might add, a French edging on the front and one on the back. The bonnet is actually out of an all-over eyelet. This bonnet has a circular back. The crown is circular, as is true on so many of the antique bonnets and the ones we make today too. I thought you would especially enjoy looking at this really heavily gathered French lace that also goes around the bottom. And the ties are extremely interesting on this bonnet. One side of the tie is very elaborate and has all kinds of trim. The other side has no trim at all. Quite an interesting concept. I thank you so much for joining me in my sewing room today. I would really like to invite you to come back next time.